Thank you very much. Glad to see everyone here, and I hope you're enjoying the talk so far. I'm going to talk about feeding animals as a way to change the way that we can perhaps change the way we feed humans in the long run. So, what is the pig idea? In short, the pig idea is looking to change the way that we feed animals, so using domestically available food waste to feed pigs, turn it back into pork, and thus keep food in the food chain. To a lot of people, this might seem quite a normal idea. People might remember pig bins, where food waste would be collected from restaurants and schools and things like that, sent off to pig farms and turned back into sausages and bacon and things like that. However, that has changed due to a 2001 ban on the use of catering waste animal byproducts for animal feed. We're no longer able to do that. As an example of how we used to do this in the past, during both World Wars, it was actually a finable offence to feed pigs and equally chickens on anything that wasn't food waste. So food that was deemed grown to be used for feeding animals, grains and crops, it was actually, you could be punished for doing that. And this has changed dramatically over the years due to a decrease in grain prices, which now, as I'll speak about in a minute, have shot right up again and are causing huge problems across the globe. Speaking across the globe, already there's a wide range of examples of where people are actually using food waste to feed pigs. This is an example of a plant in Japan which takes food waste from institutions such as restaurants and schools, processes it at the correct temperature and for the correct amount of time, and renders it safe not just for the pigs to eat, but also for humans to eat the pork from that. It's then sold on supermarket shelves as eco-pork, and ironically, a lot of this waste is coming from those supermarkets, which the pork's then put back on the shelves again. So you get this virtuous cycle of food to pig, back into food again. At the moment in the UK, instead of feeding food waste to pigs, we are sending it to anaerobic digestion, or composting, or landfill. AD is being pushed as one of the sort of best things to do with our growing problem of food waste. However, if you take 1 ton of tomatoes, you put it through an AD plant because they're no longer suitable to be eaten by humans, you'll actually only get 1% of their maximum energy out at the end of it. So it's really not a very efficient process. In comparison, if you were to feed pigs on food waste, not only could you get manure out of these pigs, so you can process that through AD plants, but you'd actually, due to offsetting land use change, chemical use, and transporting, you'd actually have a vast decrease in the amount of greenhouse gas emissions and other related environmental issues with food waste. This relates back to the food waste pyramid, otherwise known as the food waste hierarchy. It's something Feeding the 5,000 put together, and it splits quite easily the processes of dealing with waste into 2 areas. First of all, waste avoidance. Secondly, waste management. So, as a lot of you may have heard recently, there's a lot of supermarkets sending a lot of food waste to charities such as FareShare, making sure people can get fed on food rather than it going to bins. This is great, and likewise a lot of work has been done to change the amount that we do waste in terms of reducing that in the first place. What hasn't been looked into as much is feeding this to livestock, and in some cases has been criticised as still wasting food. But it's really important to know that by feeding food as feed to livestock, you're not actually wasting it. It's still kept in the food chain, and it's going to continue to make more food for people to eat in the long run. So what are we doing to kind of show that this actually can work? The pig idea has raised 8 pigs. They're a rare breed species of pig on Stepney City Farm. You've got a month left to go and see them, which I'll talk about in a minute. But basically, we've reared these. I've driven a van around London picking up a cara, which is a byproduct of the tofu process, tofu making process, brewer's grains from a microbrewery, whey from a cheesemaker in Peckham, and also topped it up with veg, which is gone beyond its shelf life or is being a bit bruised and things from a local market. We've reared these pigs from tiny weaners to huge boars now. They are really big. And These will then be used in a big public feast next month, which I'll talk about again. Next month, you're all welcome to come along to that. So, this is a twofold kind of campaign. First of all, Feeding the 5,000, who set up the Big Idea, are campaigning against food waste globally. In the UK alone, we waste 15 million tonnes of food across the food supply chain every year. Not only does this have huge ramifications in terms of greenhouse gas emissions when this is sent to landfill, but also when we've got a growing population and growing demands for food, it's completely immoral to actually be wasting this in the first place. We should be trying to redistribute this to make sure people across the world and people in need can actually eat this food rather than just being chucked into bins. Further point, whilst we're wasting all that food, we're also importing 40 million tonnes of soy, as one example of a crop, to feed to animals. 97% of soy and 60% of global maize production is actually sent directly to the feeding of animals rather than the feeding of people, which is complete waste of food when you think about the actual feed conversion ratios that were picked up on earlier. On this point, and what I'd like to go on from some of the earlier slides from the other speakers today, of the total amount of food that is produced every year across the world, we send 37% of that direct to the feeding of animals. In return, we get 11% of that back in calories of meat, dairy, and egg products, which shows a significant loss of 25% of the potential amount of food that we had in the first place. If you compare that to post-harvest losses, which is around 13%, and equally to the amount of food we send to landfill, around 17%, it's actually a far greater waste of food. So we don't normally think of the way we use food as a waste. We think about the way we get rid of it. This is a really important area that people need to start thinking about. Beyond this, we also need to think about the farmers and food sovereignty. In the UK alone, we currently import 60% of the pork that we eat. We're sourcing this from other countries with lower animal welfare standards, lower sustainability measures than we impose on our own farms in this country. And a large part of that is because of a declining population of pig farmers in the UK, which is directly linked to the escalating grain prices. 60 to 70% of pig farmers' costs will go towards the feeding their animals, which can be significantly reduced if we had a domestic available source of food waste as a feed. So I'd like to kind of sort of end on one key message, which is you are what your meat eats. When we look at this diagram in particular, we can think about pigs that have been grown on domestically available food waste from the likes of supermarkets, abattoirs, the same as was mentioned earlier, restaurants, all types of institutions. We can get a pig which can be turned into eco-pork, can be sold as a premium product, and hopefully, as it becomes an industry standard, the only pork product. But that's down to the choice of the farmer. In comparison to potentially a harder graphic to design of a pig that actually the cheaper value of that pork doesn't truly reflect the amount of damage that this causes socially and environmentally across the planet. So whilst we should be reducing meat consumption, another great campaign of the Eating Better campaign is doing a large amount of work for this. If we are to continue eating meat and the global population is continually growing in its meat demands, we need to look at the way that we feed animals to ensure that we have enough food on the planet to feed people. Looking back at those losses quickly on the amount of food that we currently are losing to feeding animals, the UN has actually said that there'll be enough for 3 billion people to feed on the food left over from that, which is in excess of the 9 billion people we're currently expecting to reach us in 2050. So it is a matter of redistribution, I must say, not so much about having to make more and more food. To that end, to wrap up, you're all invited to the Pig Idea Feast on 21st of November. We'll be serving up the pork made from our pigs on Stepney City Farm, a load of restaurants involved, and come and try it for free.
You're actually a vegan, but you're not proposing from your own position that we should all just cut out meat?
No, I don't think it's personally realistic to demand that from people straight away. I think perhaps it's a transition that more people might reduce consumption of meat, perhaps to a complete level of absence. But instead, what I'm suggesting is, if we are going to continue eating meat, we need to look beyond the shop sort of sealed packets of meat and actually see the processes that go into that and change that to make it economically viable and environmentally viable.
One other quick question. I was quite staggered when I investigated the pig industry in this country at the number of pigs that we slaughter every week. Does anybody know what that number is? I like audience participation. If you want to shout out numbers, we can make it The Price is Right. Come on. No, it's not a million. It's 165,000 a week. Do you think there is enough waste to feed 165,000 pigs a week?
Definitely. We've got 15 million tonnes of food waste, which currently there's a lot that can go to Fair Share and other charities like that. But beyond that, the capacity isn't there yet, and the infrastructure's not there yet to feed those people. And so the priority for that food, and especially restaurant waste, which can't be fed to people due to biosecurity measures, this should be prioritised as feed for animals.